everyone, here we are again this week with another interesting topic, the voting rights in District of Columbia, that is Washington DC. This is the only place in mainland America where the residents do not vote for a full-fledged voting member of Congress. Why? We'll find out. But before we go, talk to the representative of this area, Congresswoman Eleanor Norton, who does not have the right to vote in Congress, but is still there. We'll see what the residents of this city say. And for this purpose, we'll go to our colleague, Saqibul Islam.
Taxation without representation. This is a slogan that you will see on many cars in Washington, D.C. It's part of the campaign for voting rights for D.C. residents in the Congress and to publicize the fact that Washington, D.C. residents who pay federal taxes do not have representation in Congress. Let's find out what Washington, D.C. residents have to say about this. So we have Mr. Morrow here, who was born in D.C. and spent all his life in D.C. So what do you have to say about D.C. not having a voting right on the Congress floor?
We are being taxed without representation. The government does not pay rent here, but we can't tax. We pay our federal taxes to the government, but we get nothing in return. I think that they should give Eleanor Holmes Norton voting rights for the district.
And the whole issue of taxation without representation, I think it's fair for residents of the city to want to have a voting member of Congress. The city is just like any other part of the country. You got people here who work hard, who pay taxes, and it's only fair that their voice has just as much weight as anyone else's voice in this country.
Because everybody's voice need to be heard.
Yes.
Through worldwide, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it would be a great thing if they did have voting rights and if we were a state.
Congressman Norton, thank you very much for this opportunity. You're a very unique member of Congress. You're from mainland America, but you're the only member who does not have a vote in the Congress, in this body. Why is that, and how do you feel about it?
The framers of our Constitution never meant to leave any Americans with taxation without representation. We are very high taxpayers here, second highest in the United States, and yet, though I vote in committee, can do anything that any other member can do, I don't have that vote on the House floor. And yet, I've gone to the funerals of D.C. residents. We call ourselves D.C. residents.
District of Columbia.
District of Columbia residents who have died in Iraq, in Afghanistan, securing the vote for others when they themselves died without having the vote. So this is a 212-year cause of the residents of the District of Columbia. And it occurred essentially because the framers had authorized a 10-year period during which the Maryland and Virginia territory that became the District of Columbia would be transitioned to the District of Columbia. In that period, the residents of Maryland and Virginia had the same full rights as everyone else. When the territories of Maryland and Virginia became the District of Columbia, it was up to the Congress to ensure that those rights carried over. It did not do that. And that's in part because of the division between the South and the North. Though the district became a majority African-American jurisdiction only in the 1960s, it always had a large number of Black Americans here. And my own party, this is the party before it was reformed, is the party that was hostile to civil rights and to black empowerment.
Actually, the Democrats voted against the 13th Amendment.
The Democrats were, that's right. Remember that we got the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment after the Civil War from Republicans who were called radical Republicans, and by the way, those radical Republicans also gave the district the right to have its own local government and the right to have a person just like me in the Congress. When the Democrats, so-called Reconstruction was over, and the Democrats again took control of the Congress, the district lost this home rule or self-government. Until 1973, it went about 100 years with no local government, no local democracy, 3 appointed commissioners, just like a colony, no member of Congress until...
And we were talking about the capital of the United States of America, Washington, D.C.
Precisely. All the while, of course, our country was going around the world extolling democracy and telling everyone else that they ought to, in fact, become more democratic, when right in the middle of this city
What's the argument against it when you go around and talk about this right? What they say who oppose this right? What's their argument?
Today, their argument is that the district shouldn't become. Some believe that the district shouldn't become a state. Period.
Should not.
No, but bear in mind that it has always been difficult for any jurisdiction to become a state. The last 2 states were Alaska and Hawaii, and they became states after a 50-year struggle. And the reason for that is the balance of power. They became states only when it became clear that one would be Republican and one would be Democratic, and therefore there would not be any upstage of the balance of power, particularly in the Senate, where you could get 2 senators. We haven't even been able to get a House vote.
But in the long run, they cannot control the demographics, though. I mean, that's what happened in the last elections, though. I mean, how could you just guarantee that this state will remain a democratic state, and vice versa?
Oh, all that matters to the members who are here now is that it's a democratic city now. To show you how difficult it's been to get democracy in the nation's capital, we did have a bill that went through the House and the Senate where a district in Utah, a firmly Republican state, and the district paired up in order to imitate what happened with Alaska and Hawaii, one Democratic, one Republican. That bill passed the House, passed the Senate, albeit with a great majority of Democratic votes, but there were some Republicans. But that bill was derailed by a National Rifle Association gun amendment that would have wiped out all the gun laws in the District of Columbia. Now, the National Rifle Association was not interested in our vote. They just wanted a vehicle, a legislative vehicle, to wipe out our gun laws. And so we lost this very important opportunity just a few years ago.
To simplify it for our audiences, the District of Columbia, which is city of Washington, the nation's capital, the capital of the United States of America, the residents pay the second highest rate of income tax, but they cannot vote.
They can vote for president, they can vote for their own local government. That took a struggle, but they can do that. They do not have in me, or anyone else, a representative who can vote for them in the Congress or the Senate.
Even though your title is a congresswoman?
I am officially
a delegate.
Called. There are 2 titles for me. If I was a state, my 2 titles would be congresswoman and representative. As a city, which is not a state, my titles are congresswoman and delegate.
So the city or the district does have some level of representation in Congress. And there are certain levels where you can still vote, but there are like final legislations or the nominations where the city rep does not have the power of vote. Is it right?
That's right. I can vote in committee. I've even chaired a subcommittee. I can go on the House floor and debate like everyone else. I can participate in all the proceedings of the House. I get seniority like other members as they as they remain in the House. But the final vote is the vote that
really matters.
That our founders went to war about. That was the vote to make sure that you didn't have tax-paying citizens, in that case paying taxes to England, who did not have the right to decide anything about those taxes or about war and peace or anything else.
You mentioned Alaska and Hawaii. They became states because of, and after a battle for the balance of power was settled. One would be Democratic and the other one would be the Republican. So following that example, is there any other territory, maybe outside, for example, Guam or Virgin Islands or Puerto Rico, can they be part of this balance that, while you're struggling for the statehood of, for this district, they can also combine Puerto Rico, for example?
Puerto Rico is in a category by itself. Some of the other, none of the territories are seeking statehood the way we are. And the reason for that is very clear. There is a quid pro quo for their status. They, too, send a delegate to the House of Representatives, but they don't pay federal income taxes. So they get the benefit of federal appropriations and of having the same rights I have, and I would not begrudge them that right at all. They have those rights, but they don't have to pay federal income taxes. I have to pay federal income taxes. My constituents have to pay federal income taxes. But the vote that goes along with paying federal income taxes, I do not have. My constituents do not.
So would it be fair to say that the federal government is having their cake and eating it too with the district, right? I mean,
sure
they're not giving the right to vote, and also getting all the the taxes and everything.
Yeah, they're getting about $4 billion worth of taxes from this. They're getting about $4 billion in taxes for the federal government, to support the federal government from the people I represent.
You're now serving 12th term. That means you've been in this body like 22 years already, and then it's going to be 24 years pretty soon, and then on, God willing. How do you feel about it? There was a comment on a very famous talk show, Stephen Colbert.
My nemesis.
Yeah. He introduced you as a, quote unquote, if I may use that quote, fake congresswoman.
Well, he's done worse than that.
Yeah, and I think what he implied was basically, no, you are a congresswoman, a member of this Congress, but still can't vote at some level. So what do you say? What did you feel about that?
Well, I'll be forever grateful to Stephen Colbert. I became his favorite member of Congress to interview because he loved to make fun of the fact that I'm a congresswoman and I don't have the same rights everyone else has. The good thing about that is that I made so many appearances on the so-called Colbert Show, taking this kidding and trying to give back as good as I got, that more people, more Americans know about our condition than could ever have happened before. Most Americans do not know that the people I represent don't have the same rights that they have. So Colbert, I mean, I went at him, he went at me. Oh, he's been much worse. He would say, oh, we're having on Congresswoman Norton, who has less power than your student council president in middle school. I mean, But then that led people to want to know more. What is he talking about? So he spread the word and helped us, frankly, in getting greater American understanding of this this status that no American would be proud of. And I do want to make it clear that in every poll that has been taken, the American people believe that the district residents should have equal representation in the United States Congress because we pay federal income taxes.
In one of the articles, I think there was also a mention of swagger without power. Like, you
better do something. Yeah. They hear from me.
Right. So just let us know, why did you run for the office, and what do you think you were going to accomplish, and were you successful?
Well, I certainly never intended to run for Congress. I grew up in a city that had no member of Congress. I'm a third-generation Washingtonian. My grandfather entered the DC Fire Department in
Mr. Holmes, yeah.
in 1902, Richard Holmes. His father, Richard Holmes, was a runaway slave from Virginia. I had been a federal official in the Jimmy Carter administration. I chaired the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I was a lawyer. When I left the commission, I went on what we call the tenure track at Georgetown Law School. That is to say, I taught at Georgetown, and if you teach and write for a certain number of years, you get lifetime tenure. I had gotten lifetime tenure when the man who held this post before me decided to leave it. And lots of folks came to me and say, "You are a native Washingtonian, why don't you run to represent us in Congress?" I had to think long and hard about that because I'd just gotten, or recently gotten, tenure. I ran, and I have never looked back. Indeed, I still teach one course at Georgetown Law School every year because Congress allows you to do that, and I've kept my tenure. So I have the great privilege of representing the city where I was born, my father was born, and my grandfather and great-grandfather was born.
And you're doing such a great job, Congresswoman. Is it possible for me to mention your age
No,
on air?
I'm certainly not going to. How old do I look?
You look great, but it's been 22 years, and
Well, I could have come when, as a child.
as a compliment, yeah, it was, but it's okay. Well,
I used to mention my age, and then I thought, well, maybe it's about time.
but
to
it's all
stop.
over already. In print, on air.
It is.
So, what do you teach in Georgetown?
I teach a seminar to upper-class students called Lawmaking and Statutory Construction. It allows me to combine my service as a member of Congress, that's lawmaking, and statutory construction, with my service as an administration official with an administrative agency to describe how the American system makes it difficult to get finality in laws because you have so many actors. We don't have parliamentary government the way you have
Presidential.
the way you have in many parts of the world. You have the House and the Senate. You have the president has to approve, and the party runs. Here, of course, we run as individuals. It imports complexity into the system, and the seminar is designed to show how in a global economy, our system has got to be simplified in order for us to compete.
Well, you brought this up already, to simplify the system. I think there's a lot of gridlock. People are complaining out there. There's, one crisis after another. We've been just through fiscal cliff, now the sequester or sequestrations. So what do you think? Do you think the forefathers, the framers of and the designer of this system, did they really have this in mind, that this would come to this, that there will be complete gridlock just because of the party positions?
The government was set up as a group of adversaries, the House and the Senate and the President, on the theory that they'd have to compromise and get it right at some point. The failure here is not the contention. Congress has always been a very contentious body. Look, we don't have duels on the floor of the House any longer. But it was always a body where, in the end, people would compromise and come together. That is what is missing today, and it's been missing since the last Congress, the last 2 years, and we're now in the second 2 years where the House of Representatives has been controlled by a far right-wing group who essentially don't think government should do much and have wanted to cut government without any balance to how you run a government.
They have the same complaint. That group has the same complaint about the other group or your party, saying they're on the far left. They don't want to have any cuts whatsoever. They just want to focus on taxation, more taxes.
Well, nobody would say that.
So don't you think...
Nobody would say that any longer. Sure, my party has always been far more diverse. My party has had conservative Democrats. There are Democrats over here, for example.
Blue dogs.
I'm a progressive Democrat. I'm for gun safety control. There are going to be a fair number of Democrats who will be who will be essentially against the notion of too much control on guns. You will not find a single Republican, not a single one, who is for gun safety control. You don't have that. My party is the party which had Southern Democrats, Northern intellectuals, labor Democrats, all under the same roof after Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That party had to learn, and blacks, that party had to learn to compromise a long time ago because it had to compromise within its own ranks. So yes, there will be some Democrats who believe there shouldn't be cuts, but you could easily get through a bill here where you would have cuts and you'd have some revenue. My good friends on the other side want no revenue, zero revenue, even though we're just coming out of a great recession, as we call it. And if you do only cuts, you will send the economy back into a tailspin or a recession.
Speaker Banner, I think he did come up with some ideas for revenues, maybe by plugging some loopholes.
Well, that's exactly what the president wants to do. But their position now is, first of all, he never came forward with what loopholes he was going to plug. That may be the only way to do it. Their position now is they don't want to do that if it yields more revenue. So we're in really a situation that, no, the framers never intended that. They did intend that that there'd be great disputes in this Congress. It would be very difficult to get people to come together, but there would be some grown-ups in the place who would make it happen.
You have a very sympathetic man in the White House.
A what?
President in the White House. He's very sympathetic to your cause. He's now even carrying this number plate on his limo, taxation without representation. So, I mean, what else is there for you to have on the plate to accomplish this goal?
Well, the president's support is very important, but to get a bill through here, you need the support of the House and the Senate, and the president can't easily make that happen.
Congressman, first of all, I think if you can please explain a little bit, taxation without representation, the number plate, the license plate that most of district cars they carry. What is it, and what does it mean for our audiences, international audiences?
We are very grateful to have this license plate now, even on the vehicles of the President of the United States. There's several vehicles. We adopted it, I don't know, about 10 years ago. It was a suggestion of a constituent who said, why not take this slogan, put it on our license plate, so that the 20 million or so visitors who come every year will know that we have not yet fulfilled the dream of the framers, which is there would be nobody who paid taxes but had no representation in the House and Senate.
Do you work on any international issues?
It's very important, I think, to recognize that while I, of course, have my own local agenda, so does every member of Congress. Have bills that they work on because they really want to make sure they bring home something. But I am equally involved in issues across the board, domestic and international. I've gone on congressional delegations around the world. I'm going to Panama next month. So I'm a member of Congress in every respect. I'm not just a member brought here to work on District of Columbia matters.
Any trips in Asia?
I've been to India. Yes, I've been to the Middle East. Yes, this is the way to educate yourself about the world.
What do you think is going to happen after the American withdrawal from Afghanistan?
Well, I think it's very problematic. The corruption in government has been very disturbing to Americans. We are very concerned about what will happen to women and girls. But 10 years or so of blood and treasure is about all that I think the American people will abide. We will have a presence in Afghanistan. We'd hate to see all of the efforts of the people of Afghanistan and of the people of the United States go to waste. So there will be people there to help, but the kind of huge amounts of money and troops, that has got to come to an end in 2014.
Well, that was it for this week. Next week, we'll bring you another interesting topic. And those of you who have been here in DC, in the District of Columbia, now they understand what it means to have those license plates on someone's car which says taxation without representation. This is your host, Faiz Rehman. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, here we are again, this week with another interesting topic, the voting rights in District of Columbia, that is Washington, DC. This is the only place in mainland America where the residents do not vote for a full-fledged voting member of Congress. Why? We'll find out. But before we go, talk to the representative of this area, Congresswoman Eleanor Norton, who does not have the right to vote in Congress, but is still there. We'll see
just as much weight as anyone else's voice in this country.
Because everybody's voice need to be heard.
Yes.
Through worldwide, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it would be a great thing if they did have voting rights and if we were a state.
Congressman Norton, thank you very much for this opportunity. You're a very unique member of Congress. You're from mainland America, but you're the only member who does not have a vote in the Congress, in this body. Why is that, and how do you feel about it?
The framers of our Constitution never meant to leave any Americans with taxation without representation. We are very high taxpayers here, second highest in the United States, and yet, though I vote in committee, can do anything that any other member can do, I don't have that vote on the House floor. And yet, I've gone to the funerals of DC residents, we call ourselves DC residents.
District of Columbia.
District of Columbia residents who have died in Iraq, in Afghanistan, securing the vote for others when they themselves died without having the vote. So this is a 212-year cause of the residents of the District of Columbia, and it occurred essentially because the framers.
What the residents of this city say, and for this purpose we'll go to our colleague Saqibul Islam.
Taxation without representation. This is a slogan that you will see on many cars in Washington, D.C. It's part of the campaign for voting rights for D.C. residents in the Congress and to publicize the fact that Washington, D.C. residents who pay federal taxes do not have representation in Congress. Let's find out what Washington, D.C. residents have to say about this. So we have Mr. Morrow here, who was born in D.C. and spent all his life in D.C. So what do you have to say about D.C. not having a voting right on the Congress floor?
We are being taxed without representation. The government does not pay rent here, but we can't tax. We pay our federal taxes to the government, but we get nothing in return. I think that they should give Eleanor Holmes Norton voting rights for the district.
And the whole issue of taxation without representation, I think it's fair for residents of the city to want to have a voting member of Congress. The city is just like any other part of the country. You got people here who work hard, who pay taxes, and it's only fair that their voice has